Hello and welcome to today's STAIR tailored video. I'm Suzanne Forsyth with the University of Texas at Austin, and today we're going to do an introduction to the coordinate plane using the concrete, pictorial, abstract framework, and measurement. First of all, we're going to really ground this lesson in the concrete, pictorial, abstract framework, knowing that geometry, and specifically coordinate geometry, has a lot of new terminology. There are new notations and symbols that kids need to learn. Also, there's a lot of grids and pictures and tables that we use. And we want kids to be able to relate this to the real world. So we're going to go back and forth, moving among these different representations of math. So first we want to look at this abstract piece, and we want to remember that there's some essential terminology that kids need to, in some cases, review, and some new terms that are specific to coordinate geometry. Kids with math difficulties are known to really struggle with vocabulary. So you might want to review things like lines. It goes on, it never stops. What does perpendicular mean? And have them show you. What does parallel mean? What is a point? They need to know these terms because you will be using them as you describe what you're doing with the coordinate grid. In addition to that, they're going to need to know new terms like coordinate plane, or sometimes they'll hear coordinate grid. What is an axis? What is the origin? And what is an ordered pair? In addition to that, in the abstract realm, they also are going to need to know some new terminology, new symbols. How do you write an ordered pair? This kind of thing. To introduce kids to the coordinate plane, I like to use a ruler because they're really familiar with measurement. They understand that the demarcations on a ruler are the same distance from one another, whether it's inches or centimeters. We pull out a ruler, we talk about the ruler is like a number line that goes on and on. This number line will go to numbers that are smaller than 0. It'll go out here to numbers that are greater than 12. Then we can measure some things with this ruler. We can measure things like a piece of rope, or say a pencil. And then we talk about, well, what do we do if we have something to measure that is in more than one dimensions, like a square or this rectangle? Now here we have the ruler. We can measure one side. The length of this rectangle is 5 inches. But what do we do for this side? How do we measure that? And we'll talk about, well, if you have a ruler, which way does the ruler go? How do you measure this side? Well, you have to line up the 0 with this same end here to measure this side. You can't start measuring at 12. So then we would look at, well, what if we put a number line here? And we have this number line and this number line. We're measuring this rectangle. Okay, so once I take those rulers away, we have just this number line that goes left to right, and then we have a number line that goes up and down. Now, this is when I can start introducing some vocabulary and new terms that belong to coordinate geometry. Now, I've got these two lines. I'm going to give them a special name. I'm going to call them an axis. This is an axis, and this is an axis. There are two axes. Okay, because I have two, I've got to give them each their own name so I know which one we're talking about. So I'm going to call this one that goes left to right my x-axis. I'm going to call the one that goes high to the sky the y-axis. So we're going to talk about x-axis, y-axis. Can you say x-axis? Can you say y-axis? And I'm going to have them show me with their arms which direction these lines go. One other special thing you're going to notice is if you look, there is one point that both of the axes touch, and they both have the same value, the same number. Here on the x-axis is a 0, and here on the y-axis is 0. This point here has a special name. This is called the origin. Why is it called the origin? Origin means beginning, the place we start. We start at 0 when we measure. We start at 0 when we measure up and down as well. And the neat thing about having these two axes on this grid here is it helps us to not only measure the length of our rectangle and measure the width of the rectangle, but also locate where the vertices of this rectangle are in space. Okay, that was our introduction to the coordinate plane. Stay tuned for part 2.